So, what are your thoughts on evil? And what is evil? Taking on a big topic tonight. Hello, this is Angelscapes, and I'm your host, Nancy Smith. Welcome. Join me in a session for a talk about evil that runs through our lives. What is evil and what can be done about it? How can we rise to the challenge when bad things happen to us and when bad things happen to good people?
Welcome to the Angelscapes podcast, where you're encouraged to uncover and develop a direct connection with your soul's power, wisdom, and spiritual intuition that is ready to blossom. We'll explore new ideas, compelling tips, and real steps to help you learn simple spiritual practices. We're a safe place to learn more about accessing your soul's power with education and spiritual wholeness that could bring more clarity to your life. Now here's your host, a practicing medium, Akashic Records practitioner, spirit artist, coach, and mentor, Dr. Reverend Nancy Smith.
Why do bad things happen to good people? And even worse, why did bad things happen to me or to you? I'm a good person. Am I being penalized? Are misfortunes penalties? And we're also going to visit the other side of when somebody embraces evil and somebody is just walking on a disconnected life from their highest good or from their soul. There's a wonderful quote by Gandhi. In my humble opinion, non-cooperation with evil is as much as a duty as cooperation with good. I love that quote because what we do and say on both sides of the light or the dark matter to us. There's the law of returns, where what we do, what we say comes back to us. And maybe we excuse ourselves for certain things we've said and done. But what we've said and done may have hurt somebody else, but that's okay because it wasn't so bad. And that kind of action can mount and mount and mount to it's adding on. It's like shoveling up a hill. You put another shovel on it and the hill gets bigger and bigger. But coming back to our experience as good people, as people who are trying to do their best, when you reverse the word evil, you have the word live. And so let's talk about how to reverse the unfortunate flow in your life. So the first thing is about owning the energy rather than fighting it. Good, evil, it's all energy. It's all neutral. And how we work with it, what our intentions are, what our thoughts are that go into it, or somebody else's thoughts, somebody else's intention go into it, will make it go to the left, make it go to the right, or make it go up, or make it go down, or go to the light, or go to the dark, wherever you put your intentions are. Now, nullifying evil or just stomping it out is something that I wish we could do, but I feel that we need to address and see what's happening, what's coming down the pike, what's the energy that's shaking down, and understand it and understand how to work with it. Not from a fearful victim place, but from an empowered, strong place. I wanted to tell you the story of White Buffalo Woman and her message. It talks about owning evil rather than disowning it. And as the story goes, White Buffalo Woman came down from the stars, and she came down in this bright light, and she was wrapped in a white robe of a white buffalo hide. And the village people saw her coming. They saw the bright light coming, and they sent two sons out to take a look at what was that landed out in the forest or out in the plains. And so the men, two brothers, walked out to meet her. And as they realized that it was a beautiful woman dressed in gorgeous white buffalo robes, they were both in awe of her, but they had different thought processes with themselves. One of the brothers looked at her in great admiration and respect and reverence. And the other brother looked at her with, I want to own her. I want to have her. I want her to be my woman. And I don't care what she says. And as the brothers walked on, she opened her robes to the brother who wanted to have her had evil thoughts in his mind, had selfish thoughts in his mind. And she embraced him and brought her into her cloak of the white buffalo, and he turned to ash. And the other brother, who was in reverence to her, decided that he better stay in reverence to her, but he knelt down and asked for her blessings and asked her, "Why are you here?" And then she began to talk about she had come to bring peace to humankind. More likely, she was coming to teach people how to live and how to talk and relate to each other, so they could bring goodness into their life, so they could stop fighting. And many amazing teachers are coming from White Buffalo Woman, if you want to look her up. The biggest message for tonight was that she embraced the evil in her purity, in her thought and her actions and her own empowerment within herself. She looked at what this selfishness was, and she embraced it, and it couldn't stand up to this thought form, couldn't stand up to the purity of her thought. And this is how we turn evil around, is through our thoughts, through our intentions, and through our connection to source, through our soul. So if this beautiful story of White Buffalo Woman conquering evil, how are you going to conquer evil in your life? How are you reacting to the frustrations that set you back in your life? I feel like it's a mental and a heartfelt effort to recognize where you are and what's happening to you, and to reach down inside of you and connect to that intuitive part that connects you to your soul, that connects you to source, and fuel yourself with source, with the positivity, with the strength of source, which I call it unconditional love. The strength of knowing who you are, and that you are a child of God, and that you are from the stars yourself. So I'll tell you the story of Job, another wonderful story that cracks me up. This is the story of Job, and if you haven't heard it, I'll tell it to you now. Job, it was from the Bible, the Old Testament, and Job was kind of tooling along in his life, and he was a wealthy businessman. He was a fair man. He was very loving to his family, to his kids, to his wife, and his trades were bringing him quite a bit of wealth, and cattle, money. His crops that he grew came in well, and he was very, very loyal to his God. And he gave the sacrifices that he was supposed to, and he gave the reverence to God that was meant to be given to God. So there was God watching him, being very pleased with Job. And Satan came in, the devil came in and said to God, of course Job is going to do the right thing by you, because look at his life. His life is fine. How could anyone complain? I bet you, if you took all of this away from him, and he lost his crops, and he lost his home, and it just rained on his head every day, I don't think he's going to be saying nice things to you, God. I don't think you're getting the sacrifices. I don't think you'll be getting the reverence that you deserve. And God said, Job is a very loyal person. He knows right from wrong. He knows what he needs to do. And the devil said, well, then I bet you he won't. So they made a deal. Again, story. I don't think God and the devil, well, maybe they do talk to each other. I bet they do. But in any event, it was on. So God said, do your worst. And Job lost his business. He lost feast and famine. He lost his home. His wife left him. His children left him, thinking that he was a bad man because bad things were happening to him. And there Job was sitting underneath the bush, kind of hungry and kind of starving. And he said, God, why did you do this to me? Why is this happening? I'm a good person. I've done everything that I was supposed to do and more. And so God took pity on Job and came down and had a chat with him. He said, Job, what do you think this life is all about? Do you think that I'm here or to you do nice things and I do nice things back to you? Were you here when beginning of the time when life first started, or when the first man walked the earth? No, you weren't. You don't know any of this. I do. You just um have to trust me and trust in life. And Job said, that is really a big call. That's really hard to do. But Job stuck to his faith. And because that's what he knew, and that's what he knew to be true in his heart. And that's where he always went to for that balance when things weren't quite right. So even though things were quite wrong in his life, he stuck to the balance. He stuck to God. I'm probably paraphrasing this story a lot. It's been a while since I actually read it. But in the meantime, God and Satan sat down together, and God said, well, I won the bet. Give Job his treasures back. And so Job retrieved everything that he had lost and more. And his children came back, and his family was together after that. And he was able to live a creative, happy life, but he continued to be loyal to his God. And I feel like the reason that story cracks me up is because, can you imagine the devil betting God, and this poor man is a little bit of a victim to their shenanigans? And what kind of what was the thought process behind that story? But I also feel that when we stay in our true integrity, because that's where the best place is, because we know how to bring balance into our lives, because we know who we are, no matter what the external outside extremes happen. If we stay in that authentic self that connects to soul, we're going to change things up. We're going to create more things. We're going to keep moving. And that's what we're meant to do, is to live in this creative positivity. There are times in our lives, many, many times in our lives, where we lose what we thought we had. Could be your health. It could be a huge bill comes in, or a disaster comes in, and your bank account's gone. It could be losing a child. Grief is huge for really making us wonder, is there a God? Is there good? Is this all dark? Is this all black? This is just evil, oftentimes. And the challenge is to not name it as evil or good. The challenge is to stay in the grace of our spirit, of our soul. And that's how we turn evil around. That's how we turn evil into live, because we're willing to live our lives no matter what. I have some other things that I'm going to say a little bit later about when evil visits our door in the form of another person or a situation. And we'll talk a little more deeply about that, because I don't want to minimize it. But it still all boils down to, what is our relationship with ourselves? What is our connection to our soul and to the divine energy? And as a medium, I know that I've said often, we're people, we're actually spirits having a human experience. And there are many spirits in many forms having experiences on this planet at the same time. We just happen to be in human form. And the human form is not such an easy form to be in. We get hangnails, we get pain, things don't work out for us. We're in a tremendous push and pull in society with other human beings. And the human form isn't perfect. And also the human brain is not perfect. We are still like animalistic beings. We start off with that little limbic lizard brain, and sometimes we kind of go back into that lizard brain and work from that awareness, or that kind of consciousness, and we forget our higher consciousness. And I feel like the challenge with humanity is to remember who you are as a spirit, and that as we sit in these physical bodies, these are biological intelligence. These are our suits that we wear. These are the mechanisms that we have for going through this life, but it's not all that we are. And this is an important piece to remember when we're struggling with good and bad, or the illusion of good and bad, light and dark, evil and not so evil, good, blessings. All of life is darkness and light, and kind of in between. It's all connected, and it's all inside of the universe, and it's all inside of God. So as the white buffalo woman, embraced the selfish thoughts, what we would call evil thoughts. And while she was connected fully to the universe, she just came from the stars. She knew who she was. That unbalanced thought could not survive. And this is really important message I want to say about evil. There's another story I wanted to tell you. It's Joseph and the multicolored coat. It's also from the Old Testament. And I'm sure there's a lot of stories out there. I just happened to find a couple from my favorite Old Testament. So Joseph was the youngest of a bunch of kids in a family, and his father adored him and made him this beautiful multicolored coat. And his brothers became jealous. And his father said, take him to the market place in Egypt. I guess that's where they were. And show off your brother and come back with all the things that I'm asking you to buy. So on the way to the marketplace, the brothers hit Joseph over the head, threw him in the well, and stole his coat. And when they came back to see their father, blood was spattered on the coat, and they said, a lion got him. He's dead. We couldn't save him. Oh my gosh, it's so bad. And there Joseph was at the bottom of this well. And then along came a Egyptian slave trade, kind of walking along with their camels, and they heard his cries, and they pulled him out of the well and took him into slavery, sold him into slavery when they got to Egypt. So Joseph was at a loss. How do I live? How do I live this life? How do I do? He did the best he could to try to survive what was happening. And he did so well that his people around him became jealous of him and made up stories about him. And he ended up getting thrown in jail. And as he was thrown in jail, he said, I got to do something about this. I got to change my life. And he became really creative, and he realized that he had a gift for interpreting dreams. So he began to help people to interpret their dreams and help them solve problems in their lives. And eventually, once he was out of jail, he became kind of popular until the Pharaoh heard about his gifts. And the Pharaoh had been having very disturbing dreams. There were 7 fat cows were being swallowed up by 7 skinny cows. And he was very distressed about this. And he asked Joseph from the multicolored coat, what could this dream possibly mean? And Joseph thought for a while, and he says, well, you're going to have 7 years of good crops and wealth, and then you're going to have 7 years of famine. So you need to put aside a good portion of your overflow of crops and wealth into silos and places where you can use them and eat from them from the 7 years that are going to be the lean years. So the Pharaoh listened to him, and he did what he was asked. The Pharaoh did what Joseph suggested, and Joseph became a helper to the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh gave him a position right next to him. And during the 7 lean years, the Pharaoh was passing out the grain to people who were starving. And one time his brothers came up and didn't even recognize Joseph, but Joseph recognized them. And a number of things happened. And finally, the brothers realized that it was Joseph and asked for forgiveness. And his brother said, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good. And in his lifetime, he realized that he had turned the difficult thing around and became aligned with God's will, or the will of spirit, or the will of your soul, and was put into a very auspicious position to save many people from starving to death. So in this story, Joseph did the best he could in all of these difficult situations. He was a victim multiple times, and yet he did not stay in that victim mentality, that resentment. Evil can multiply and triumph when good people become resentful or bitter over misfortune. And you need to find it within yourself to transcend despair, forgive ignorance, heal betrayal, and love everyone, and go on with a life of spiritual growth. It may be a hard road, but it will make good people great. It will take the hard road sometimes will call a good person into trials and tribulations, only to that person comes out to the other side doing things that they would never have been able to do before. And that is the gift in these hard times. So if we call these times evil and we feel that we're victims and our bitterness overcomes us, that's evil. That's negative. That's dark. And that can go nowhere. It can't grow, and it can't develop. It can't be creative. So great people refuse to be victims of their circumstances, and they have learned to reverse the word evil into live. And that's how I'm suggesting that you turn these negative, dark things around for yourself. And so I said I was going to go back and talk about the scary part of evil. And we are really good at scaring ourselves. Humanity has the best imagination, has the best artists of fear and terror than you could ever imagine. I mean, can you imagine a bunch of tigers sitting around telling them horror stories to each other, or a bunch of elephants, or a bunch of birds up in the branches saying, and did you hear the one about, but no, the animals live in accordance to the flow of law, but humans, we have our imaginations in spades. And the first person that came to mind was Hieronymus Bosch, a Dutch painter. And back in the day, oh, I should have gotten the dates. I don't know, maybe the 13th century. I don't even know. Painted these terrifying paintings that came from some of the strict and severe religions of the time. And he painted people being tortured in hell. And it was like, oh my God. When I look at that stuff, and I'm like, ever since I was a little kid looking at it, I'm just never going to go to hell. I'm going to be good forever. That painting did its job. But as I look into the paintings, none of that is real. It's just fear. It's not just fear. It is fear that was created in the imagination. Another really scary person is Stephen King. He can come up with the most horrifying situations. I can only read or watch a Stephen King movie or read a Stephen King book for so long, and then I can't do it anymore, because I really buy into that fear and that treachery and and you know, most of that horrifying stuff is people who are out of balance. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And some of them are just evil spirits, you know, or an evil entity. One was that clown called It, and I think it turned out to be a spider that had hallucinogenic abilities. So it was actually making these webs, and I feel like it was just it's doing its natural thing, only it was a giant spider. And it decided that human beings were tasty morsels, and that was actually horrifying, but it was imagination. It was fiction. There's a new movie coming out. I just saw the trailer for Constantine 2. What if God went into cahoots with Satan and all of the demons were on earth? And I had to laugh at that. That's what made me think of the story of Job, because God and Satan did go into cahoots and make Job suffer, only to prove Job as being a righteous man. And I don't know what Constantine 2 has any kind of special message behind it, except to scare the Jesus out of us. But these fears can lay deep within us, and they can feed us, and we can create more and more fear on top of that, and create almost a no-win zone. What we think is what we create. How we think is how we live. So let's take a look at that. You know, what's running through your mind? Where are you a victim of unfortunate things? Are you a victim of Satan? Do you believe that Satan is alive and running amok in the world? Or do you think something's different? Like maybe there's energies moving that we can harness, and their energy is neutral. You can do whatever you are mastering, you will do. If you're mastering fear and think that you're a victim, you're going to do a really good job at it. But if you master yourself and your soul's connection to who you are as a spiritual being, you can master that. So while you're at it, how about adding some spiritual allies into your life? Archangel Michael is my first ally in all things spiritual, whether it's mediumship or soul retrievals, or dealing with somebody who's very scary, or going to a place or a thought or having to use my courage to go to someplace that scares me. So I have a great ally in Archangel Michael. So as I say my prayers, I call in, if ever you have had a session with me or reading with me, you know that I call in angels, masters, teachers, and loved ones to support and guide me in the message and to bring healing to that person who is sitting across from me. And you'll hear that me say that prayer pretty much every time I give a reading, because I want my allies near me. The work that I'm doing isn't necessarily my work that I'm doing, but it's spirit work that spirit is doing through me. And it's lovely to be a channel for a spirit coming through. Now, I can also be a channel for aggravation, frustration, disenfranchise, or just plain old pissed off. And I can be a channel for that too if I let it go too long. And that's not okay with me. I need to be aware of what's going through me. I need to be aware of how I'm expressing myself. I can make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes, but I also need to I am responsible to bring myself back on track with my alignment, with my soul, and my spirit, and the natural flow of the universe for the highest and good. That's a practice, guys. I wake up reminding myself of that every morning, and I go to bed reminding myself of that as I fall asleep. And nightmares, oh my God, I have just as many nightmares as anybody else that are very, very scary. And sometimes they wake me up at night, and they are not real. They're nightmares. Sometimes they're telling me a story of something that I need to pay attention to in my life. And sometimes I've just had a real stressful day and it's letting off steam. So learning to understand my own dreams and my own thoughts has been also very important, because I do get influenced by energies around me that lean into me. And there are sometimes, remember I said that we are spirit having a human experience. There are spirits on this earth plane that are not having a human experience, and they can be angels, they could be loved ones, they could be our pets, or they could be the spirits of our pets. And sometimes they can be little stinkers, and they can just interrupt our lives or trip us up, or bring us a series of unfortunate things. And if that's happening to you, the first thing that you need to do is call in your allies. Don't give yourself a hard time. Take a deep breath, ground yourself, center yourself, and say, where am I and what am I doing and what am I calling to myself? If I'm in a situation, or you're in a situation of serious misfortunes, then you need to call in some serious creativity and some serious universal fix-it machines that can help you. You are not alone in your misfortune, but you do need to ask for help from these ginormous allies in spirit that exist all around us. Labeling things evil is something that you need to pay attention to. Labeling things good is also something you need to pay attention to, because we can put a big sticker of good on something that's very, very bad. And we see people do this all of the time. We see this in the environmental, how we take care of the environment around us, the environmental out of balance stuff that we do. And we slapped a big "this is good" sticker on it, and it's not true. So it was we tell ourselves little lies all the time that can add up to a ginormous lie. And sometimes we need to just take the labels off and see something just as it is, for what it is. Do you remember the story Where the Wild Things Are? Maurice Sendak book. It's my favorite book ever when I was a kid, and then growing up. I read it to my kids, and it was this little boy who was just running around being a little monster. He just was ripping the house apart. And his mother sent him to his room without dinner. And he said, "You just stay up, you there, you little monster, until you could calm down." And so this little guy, he had his monster suit on with the ears. And it was just adorable looking at it as an adult. But looking at it as a parent with little kids, I got that pain of that mother. Any event, this little boy stayed in his room and stayed a monster. And he decided in his imagination to get in a boat and travel to the island of monsters, where they just roared and stripped things apart and had a monster party. And they had a blast. And they were very scary looking. And what makes me want to talk about this right now is sometimes the monsters in our lives look so scary, but if we look at them again and we embrace them, they're not monsters anymore. They could be an emotion that's been blown up too big, or they could be something that we're believing in somebody else's story. that when we look at it, we find out, oh, it's not so true. Or sometimes monsters, we need monsters. You think of and they can look really evil and mean. In Japan, they had these really scary looking statues. And I just stared at them when I first saw them. I just couldn't stop staring at them. And they had fangs and they had claws, and they were protecting the temple so that no evil could come in and hurt the temple. And so we'll get back to the wild things in a minute. So when my son was young, he had a lot of nightmares and he was scared of a few things. He's just 3 years old. He had to just get into the big boy bed now and get his pillow and the big boy and covers and the big boy space in the bed. And he didn't like it one darn bit. It was scary to him. So he would collect all of his scary monsters and the hard plastic ones, and he'd put them under his pillow, which was very thin, and he would sleep on his monsters so that they would protect him while he was sleeping. So the evil monsters became the helpers, is what I'm getting at here. So going back to Maurice Sendak's book, Where the Wild Things Are, the animals, the monsters in animal form, were having so much fun, but the little boy got tired. And he said, I'm kind of hungry for dinner. I kind of need to go home. And the monsters just wailed and cried. They were so sad. And they put him on his little boat, and he drifted off back to home and ended up in his bedroom, and there was dinner on the table, and it was still hot. And so he ate his dinner, and that was his tromping around with the monsters was coming to an end. And I'm sure he met them the next day. But these things that are evil, these things that scare us in the night, these things that go bump, these things that seem like they're horrendous, often have a bit of truth in them. They often have a bit of understanding. They're still from source, and there's still some kind of spark. Now, don't get me wrong. I know what you're thinking, and I'll come back to that in a minute. Some kind of spark that we, just like the white buffalo woman, that we can connect to. And once those two sparks connect, things will come into balance. And so what is not in balance with us will poof out, will float away. And what is in balance with us will stay there. So if fear and evil and anger and we're languishing, if that's what resonates with us, that's what's going to stay. But as the white buffalo woman was from the stars, that selfish, evil thinking gentleman could not stay. So that's where I want you to go to and to consider when you're looking at evil, and you're really getting scared of it. I'm not going to ever spend the night in a haunted house. I'm telling you that right now. So don't think that I'm just all brave and puffed up here. How people can be evil. But I remember I started to say how we are fragile as human beings, and sometimes we're not made quite right. Some people miss the sociopaths or psychopaths, sometimes can miss that element of empathy that is in the brain that's needed for a person to understand how another person feels, to have empathy for them, or to understand the difference between good and evil. They just are going to do what they're going to do. And that can lead to what we would call evil, to some really unhealthy, destructive behaviors, mass murdering, that kind of thing. Or even sometimes we can have leaders in the world who are just plain old evil, who will do genocide or get themselves so worked up that they're in the right and everybody else is in the wrong, and so they massacre everyone. And the politics are horrendous. That's evil to me. I will easily call that evil, and I don't want to embrace it. I don't want to dance with it. On the other hand, I do pray for the balancing of that out of balance dark energy to be brought into balance. But I have to say, just like God said to Job, were you there when I created the earth? Were you there when mankind first, the first man and woman walked the planet? No, I wasn't there. So I can't say that I know what true balance is or what is being balanced out in these different parts of people's decision-making process, or these different parts of the world where there's so much suffering happening. I don't want that suffering to continue on. I don't want that on this. I don't think it belongs on this planet. I don't think it belongs in humanity. And yet it does happen in humanity. So I'm not saying that to embrace it, and there's some good in that. And I'm not saying telling anyone to go into a place where they could be in danger or hurt. But I want to also say that things can be brought back into the light. Things can be balanced. It may not be the way that we think they should be balanced, but we can pray for that balance, and we can walk that balance within our lives. If we spend our days putting the good sticker on things that aren't good, like recycling or eating the wrong foods or whatever it is in our lives, or we're going to ostracize a member of our family because they're just a pain in the neck, it's easier not to even talk to them, and yet it's causing a tremendous amount of pain in that person's life. If we continue on those behaviors and we put good stickers on them, then we are lying to ourselves about what darkness is and what not love is, outside of love is. And then we are giving evil permission to live and thrive in the world. We're all connected. So if we're going to lie to ourselves, the lies vibrate out and they impact all of humanity. If we tell the truth and we live in balance, that vibrates out and affects all of humanity. So we do impact the world, whether we believe it or not, whether we just decide I'm an ostrich and I can just ignore everything else and just be the best I can. What you can do is be the best you can in balance and in truth and allow it to ripple out. That's what you really want to do. If you want a spiritual path and you want to make an impact on good versus evil. And there's this story about the grandfather, and it's a Native American story, and his grandson. And the grandson came in and said, I have two wolves. I have two wars inside of me. One is good and one is good and caring and loving. And I treat my friends right. And then there's this other inside of me that's jealous and greedy and wants to steal things. And he said, I don't know which one is going to win going from day to day. And the grandfather said, the one that wins is the one that you feed. So if you feed yourself with the goodness and the balance of life and the helping other people and working as part of a community, that's what will thrive. If you feed yourself the jealousy and the resentment that you aren't getting enough of what you want to, that's what will thrive. So you need to make a choice, grandson, on who's going to thrive and live in your life and who's going to be starved to death and not thrive and not be strong. So a little lesson on choosing good from evil. Psychic attacks. I kind of wrote that down as something that we should talk about in terms of evil. Psychic attacks and curses. If somebody decides to curse us, and maybe they know how to use energy better than we do, or maybe they have a couple of different tricks and tips of wrapping something up and making a voodoo doll, or making and I don't want to I just do not want to insult somebody's religion. I'm sorry I said that. But if somebody decides to take elements in nature to create evil that is focused on one other person, you can thwart it. You can, in your loving of yourself, in your connection to that highest power, just like the white buffalo woman, that energy cannot survive in your auric field. It cannot survive coming close to you. You do not have to pay somebody $1,500 to $3,000 to $10,000 to remove the curse. You simply need to remember who you are. What am I attracting to myself? What am I in denial about? And get those allies. There are so many spirit allies. It's not even funny. And pull them around you and set your mind on the pathway of clear thinking, clear loving, and awareness of where you're stepping. So I'm not saying ignore evil, but I am saying paying attention to how it's leaning on you, how it's influencing you, choosing to not let it influence you. Even though it looks like it might be just so easy to punch the guy in the nose or to steal the thing or to just make it right by doing something that is also dark and out of balance. It's not going to bring things into balance. Two out of balances do not make a balance. They just don't. So we need to balance an out of balance place with the opposite force, which is a lighter energy, an energy that's more aligned with God, that's aligned with the God's creation of nature. And again, we can say, I don't know how this is going to come out. I don't know how to solve this, but I'm going to call in my allies and we're going to figure it out together. When we get rejected and ostracized from our community, and it happens to all of us, and I've had it happen way too many times than I care to talk about, that is probably the most dangerous thing that can happen to a single individual. If you took it back, a few hundred years, when we needed a society to live in and thrive, to be ostracized or thrown out of the group, it's like sure death. So when a group decides to ostracize and reject one person or another group of people, there is great pain on the behalf of those that were ostracized or put out or diminished. And that to me is a big source of evil. When we're not living in compassion and forgiveness with one another, when we're not looking at each other for our highest self. There's a beautiful greeting saying namaste, kind of a yogic, a little Buddha, and it says, I bow to you. I bow to the spirit within you. I see your spirit. You see my spirit. And that is a beautiful way of reminding yourself to see the good in others, see the creativity in others, see the highest bit in others. But usually in communities, we come up with another saying. There's lots of ways of saying it, where there is maybe anger or frustration or cynicism, and I see the asshole in you and you see the asshole in me, and let's dance, let's play, let's bring this struggle right to the table and let all hell break loose, which sometimes we need to do. And sometimes people just need to have it come in for a good fight. That does not bring things into balance. It may clear the air. It may help, but for the most part, it doesn't help. When we see the goodness in each other, when we see this powerful spirit in each other, that's when we promote life, as opposed to promoting death or smallness. So when we want to be prejudiced or ostracize somebody, or that one family member who's such a pain in the neck, we're just not going to talk to him ever again or her ever again. We'll just ignore that they were even part of the family. We hurt ourselves. We hurt the person and we hurt ourselves. It's the forgiveness and the love that brings it back together. Again, remember, our thoughts and our attitudes are ripples that go out and talk to the rest of the universe. So when we are telling the universe it's okay to ostracize and hurt somebody, which in society, because we're social beings, is almost like a death sentence, then we are actually walking in darkness. We're actually walking in, we are stepping into evil, and we need to turn it around. When we are treated poorly, when somebody comes into our lives that is maybe narcissistic, or love bombing, as I call it, somebody may come in and present one face, but really they're not that face. There's something darker, there's something more manipulative, there's something more painful. And as that one mask falls off and the other one comes forward, we find ourselves in a hot water, in a whole bunch of trouble, because we're being told how horrible we are. They call it gaslighting now. We're being misled on the truth. We're so far off of our own truth and our own understanding that we don't know how to go home again into ourselves. And that is very much like a psychic attack, only the person is next to you and with you, and feeding you and influencing you in a very unbalanced, mean, evil way. And it's up to us to be aware of how we're being influenced and what we're believing and what we need to do. And it's up to us to not be a victim to the situation anymore. And not being a victim in the situation anymore, and particularly in a one-on-one relationship, isn't trying to save the other person. It's really more about leaving the situation and saying, I'm not dancing with this anymore. There's something within us that attracted that, or there's something in us that we thought that was part of being in a relationship, or we had some misgivings, or we just were duped. And that is also evil and needs to be brought into balance. And sometimes we may be the victim, but the victim has to be the fixer. The victim has to be the one to walk away. The victim has to be the one to bring it into balance, bring the situation into balance by not letting it go on anymore. So we could have really deep emotions that we don't own. They can grief and loss, and betrayal can make huge holes inside of ourselves. And nature abhors a vacuum. So if we don't fill this hole with healing, with love, with compassion, with understanding, the universe or Mother Nature will come in and fill it for us. And this is why I wanted to bring us to the concept of fraud, when other people can come into our lives and tell us bold-faced lies, and we believe them because they're so convincing. They put a good sticker on something very bad. That's evil. But our emotions are so calling for the grief inside of us is so calling to be connected with another person that we accept the lie without really realizing it's a lie. We just can't see through it. And that's how fraud, this has been a huge, big thing right now, like dating fraud. Somebody will pretend that there's somebody else online, and then they'll try to get a bunch of money out of you. And then they'll try to get even more, a bunch of money out of you, and they can destroy your lives because you're not taking care of the grief or the big hole within yourself. You're looking to somebody else to do it, and they're very happily doing it for you while stealing you blind or making you feel real bad or destroying your life. And this is evil. However, you are responsible to be aware of the influences that are happening to you. So, and around you, and what you're responsible to be aware of what you're agreeing to. And so you're playing with the evil, or you're dancing with the evil. And remember, White Buffalo Woman came from the stars. She knew who she was. She was with Source. That evil could not stand. It went into ashes. It could not stay with her. And this is where, when you're in that grief, when you're in that hole, that betrayal, that god awful thing, you need to, before you move on to the next relationship, you're still young, you could still find love in your life, you could still do this. You need to take care of the holes in your heart first and heal them and become the strong person again, transcending what has brought you down and put you into pain, transcending it, and then creating something new in your life. It's the only way to do it, guys. It's the only way to do it. There's no shortcuts. There's no cheat codes for this one. Our soul needs to fill the holes in our life, and we need to let the soul and your spiritual allies come in and help you with this. If we go to the outside for answers, go outside of ourselves to find that perfect love that's going to help our heart heal, or that perfect fix, or that perfect shopping spree, or that perfect job, the outside will always let you down, will always disappoint you. And you invite evil into your life when you behave like that. It's harsh to say that, but it's true. Only we can make ourselves whole through a healing practice, through caring for ourselves, being aware of ourselves, and understanding what we're agreeing to and what we're listening to. When we give ourselves away, we lose ourselves. And it's a long road to get ourselves back. That's evil. So let's talk a little bit more about those spirits that are not having a human experience. Those spirits that are watching us live, or they're having their own life on another plane. And maybe they have a different set of values, or they have a different set of how they're doing their lives, because they're not human. And they may cross over into our plane and influence us in a way that's not good for us. So to that is the same answer. Know who you are, know what's right, know what's wrong. If you're struggling with addiction, if you're struggling with not being able to stay in your body because it's too painful, then ask for help from healers, from your soul, from your higher power, and go find a balance within yourself that you can move forward on. And if something is pushing you right or left and it's not who you are, let it go. Ask for protection and don't get involved. Say no, or bring in Archangel Michael or any number of the angels, masters, teachers, loved ones, the big kahunas that love us, that want us to be healthy, happy, and whole in our lives as best we can, because we're spirit having a human experience. In the Tibetan Book of the Dead, I listened to it years ago. Richard Greer was the voice. I listened to it on Audible, and it was lovely listening to his voice. But the thing in the Tibetan Book of the Dead that was said over and over again, this is a book that when somebody is dying, and about 3 days after their death, their loved one will sit next to the deathbed and read this book over and over and over again to give them instructions as to what to do when they cross over. And in this book, it says, nothing can hurt you now. You are okay. And even though you see monsters and scary things, walk through them. They can't hurt you and they can't scare you. Keep walking. And remember, you're traveling to nirvana. You're traveling to the place of God. You're traveling to peace. You're traveling to healing. And don't give up until you get there. And there's a lot more that they say in this story, but this is the thing that I take back to me. And I feel like even as we're living our lives, we sometimes need to remember these things really can't hurt us as long as we keep moving towards the intention of our soul, the intention of our higher power, the intention of what is balanced, the intention of what is in the highest good for all. If we keep moving in that direction, the scary monsters can't hurt us. The evil can't hurt us. And though I move through the valley of death, you are by my side. It's a really true, beautiful verse. I would, in times of fear, pull it out and read it and see what it really means. You are with me. I am not alone. So what grief and loss do to us is what we need to embrace within our hearts and what we need to fill with love. And that will help keep evil at bay while we heal in a state of grace and protection. So some thoughts on karma. What we think and do comes back to us. Instant karma is going to get you. But I really think that to go into a deeper understanding of what that means is that, you know, what we put out is what we get back. This is a law of reciprocity. When we pass over, when we go to the pearly gates or whatever, on the other side, there's an Egyptian myth that you have to weigh your heart against a feather. And if your heart is too heavy, you can't go into heaven. You have to go back. And the symbolism in that is that as we release these things in our lives, as we no longer put importance to the worldly things, our heart gets lighter and lighter and lighter until it's as light as a feather. And when our hearts are as light as a feather, that's when we can move into the heavenly realm, or the realm, the beauty realm. And that's a wonderful symbolism of letting go of what burdens us, what's making us heavy, and continue to remember that we are spirit having a human experience, and we can let go of the heaviness and continue to walk to spirit is very light. The physical body is very heavy. Walk to lightness in our life. So what we reap is what we sow. It doesn't mean that you deserve evil in your life. It doesn't mean that you have to live an out of balance life. It means you need to take care of business. It means that you need to take a look at what your actions are, even though you're angry and sad and resentful. What are you doing with that energy? And only you can be responsible for that energy that's coming up within yourself. So ways to clear heavy energies that could distract you or waylay you. I like to use smudge. I think the smell, sage, just reminds me of the sacredness of life. I like to sometimes feel my house, part of house cleaning. Or I could use a spray, beautiful smells. oils and sound, filling the house with beautiful music and sound. It could be a drum, it could be singing, it could be a radio, it could be song. Sound, the vibration, the healing vibration of music is phenomenal. Flowers. I like to fill my house with flowers sometimes, just remind myself of the beauty of life, the transitional aspect of life, but the beauty of life can bring me back home to remembering who I really am and what I'm really doing here. And that I'm here to have a spiritual life, to be happy and to be aligned with my soul and to be connected to the highest power possible and walk on a beauty path that vibrates out and invites everyone around us to step onto that beauty path, even Putin. So thank you so much for following this session and this episode. And may you find your beauty path. May you find your peace path. May you walk with grace and ease and always invite your soul and spirit and the higher power to walk with you as you look at all the colors and all the darkness and all the light that life has to offer, and that you stop calling it evil and start calling it energy that you can create anything you want to. Namaste.
Thank you for joining the Angelscapes podcast. We hope you've gained new insights and inspiration for your journey to uncover and access your soul's power. For more information and a deeper dive into finding clarity in your life, go to angelscapes.com. Remember to subscribe so you can be part of the discussion. It may just change your life. See you next time.